It's another exciting week of Zag Talk. This week, our friends at Zag head to the European AV Summit, so we got some reports from the ground there. And we're joined by Steve Greenfield of Automotive Ventures talking about the mobility investment landscape. But in the meantime, hey, Greg.
Hey, Jonah. How does it feel to be a noted transportation technology guy, as the Washington Post recently dubbed you?
I'd rather be a guy than a bro, I suppose. But I had fun chatting with the Washington Post this week about all my guy thoughts.
I'll turn that around because we're both Xers here, so I got to quote say anything. Don't be a guy, Jonah. Be a man. That'd be my response to you.
I should send in a correction. Yeah. Please, I'm a man. We had fun talking about how congestion is being impacted by the rise of delivery and how delivery is basically eating our streets. Kind of just to look at where it's being improved across the U.S. and can any of that be applied to D.C. So the answer is probably not for the next 4 years, but hey.
Well, speaking of which, let's kick things off here and dive into this from here. So, modern delivery, let's draw off some of your own news here on the whole no tax on tips buried in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which I guess we're going to call OBA from now on. Is that
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. But in any case, yeah, what does no tax on tips mean for delivery? Because, wow, like the arbitrage game has just changed, it feels like.
I think this one's really interesting, and I'm surprised more people aren't picking this apart, maybe because there's so many other society-rending changes in the policy. But yeah, no tax on tips obviously got a lot of attention, let's say. But I think what's really underappreciated is how tip pay can really vary wildly from job to job, right? And so you think of classically it's restaurant, or now basically anytime you have a retail interaction, a little machine asks you to tip. But actually, delivery workers make a wild portion of their pay out of tip. I think the most recent data is if you're doing restaurant delivery, it's about 53% of your pay is tipped. If you're doing groceries, it's 45%. And that's way higher than restaurants. Usually, one, you have a higher base pay, and two, you tip out the rest of your colleagues. You actually don't even make a big chunk of your tipped wage. But if you're doing delivery, right, someone, let's say I'm getting $100 worth of food delivered to me, usually the preset is tip 15%, so that's $15. But most of that, kind of base pay, quote unquote, goes straight to the restaurant or the grocery store, right? So you're not getting that as the courier. You're just getting, the kind of chump change that the platforms are offering you. So all of a sudden, most of your pay is from the tip. And if that's untaxed, that's a pretty big chunk of your income that's not being taxed. So, terrible policy, but fascinating repercussions.
And there will be all sorts of new opportunities for people to work in delivery once, current delivery workers are being held in, America's new Google archipelago, also paid for by the
Thank you. That's the real kicker. Yes, we'll need a whole new flock of corn-fed American delivery workers.
Well, I forget off the top of my head which cabinet secretary suggested about the Americans who are currently on Medicaid who will be able to start taking over these kinds of various jobs that will soon be open. But I'm sure someone will suggest various segments of the population to do that one. But not to get
bleak new world.
Well, let's get into other policy ramifications because yes, we're talking about this when of course so many of the other mobility coverage of the bill is focused on the annihilation of the various EV credits and various things. But yes, it is interesting. One of the contenders that was challenged in this, Slate Auto, which was going to produce a under $20,000 EV, a stripped down truck, which was actually, I don't know, I'm curious your thoughts on the aesthetic we haven't discussed, near and dear to my heart. It looked a lot like the bare bones pickup trucks my father owned when I was a child for work.
I'm not a truck guy, but I like any truck that's not this monstrosity, right? Yeah, it reminded me of like a 80s, 90s little, Toyota kind of.
This is why, like every other aspect of Japan, we fetishize their tiny trucks, among other things. But anyway, Slate has had to abandon that dream, right? They pulled the language off their website. The numbers don't pencil out. So
yeah, no longer under 20K.
Congrats.
Yes, we're sort of ceding our electric future to China.
Which we come back to, when that dam cracks. But it is interesting. They're backed by Bezos and others, and even they didn't have the clout to avoid that from happening. So much for that. And then further downstream news, Nissan apparently is, Nissan, not Poor exactly Nissan. A front runner here in the mobility sweepstakes in the world here, but they are delaying production, I guess, of 2 EV models in the United States, which further hands the EV future over to China. I don't know.
You smuggle one executive out of Japan in a suitcase, and it's all downhill from there.
It's like maybe you shouldn't have tried to indict the guy. I mean, that's a contested history there, but yeah, they have been downhill ever since. But it is interesting watching Nissan desperately try to find somebody to take itself off its own hands. To
Please buy us.
Foxconn, Xiaomi, Honda, any of the other Japanese. Still waiting for that shoe to drop there about like what do we do with the zombie automakers at this point, and who gets bribed to take them out of their own misery, kind of thing.
I'll do it.
There you go. Well, while you do that, I would say we can focus on the other end of this too.
Yeah, if they're down, who's up?
Who's up? Well, who's up is Moove, which let's discuss Moove for a second. Moove is it's described as Uber backed in a lot of the headlines here, but Moove is a Nigerian mobility startup.
I like that I can hear the two O's when you're saying Moove.
I know. I am like playing it out here. Moove has raised $1.2 billion, not in equity, not for a round, but in debt. So just getting drawn on their credit lines here to expand. And what I think is really interesting about this expansion is not in Africa. I think it's in the States, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, stateside. Yeah.
And it's the idea is that they want to buy fleets of EVs. This is, I guess, where the EV purchases are coming from, to basically turn them into Waymobiles. And so we have our
Waymobiles.
Yeah, Waymobiles.
Waymobiles.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Richard Scarry. And but I think it's fascinating and telling here that now we're starting to see this picture come into play here, where now we've got entities who have nothing to do with like ride hailing, like Uber itself or like Waymo and providing itself. But here comes this third entity that's like, no, we're going to run fleets of Waymobiles maybe under our own brand name, or we're just going to provide the debt. We're going to own the vehicle. And now you can start to see how this is playing out of like, Waymos as an asset class that is just being run at utilization rates to monetize it. And like, man, I'll stop in a second here, but like I can totally see how Blackstone is going to raise the next.
Waymos is an asset class. I can't wait to see like the spammy newsletter ads next to like, oh, you should own art because it's fractionalized asset class. So own 1/100th of a Waymo. But I think there's sort of two fascinating things here. On one hand, yeah, the unsexy part of AVs is that they're still just cars that need to be maintained and cleaned and serviced, and when someone barfs in them, you got to deal with that. And yeah, there's been a lot of reports out there of dirtier Waymos than one might expect for a Jag.
I was gonna say, friend of the pod, Harry Campbell, is out there taking photos of like rusted wheels on rims. Them, and not looking pretty.
So, and yeah, Moove obviously has some expertise in that with their legacy of doing kind of fleet for rideshare in emerging economies. But on the other hand, yeah, raising a Billy point two, why couldn't Waymo just take that debt on, probably at a better rate, and buy it themselves, right? Are they trying to keep their balance sheet cleaner, and who's actually looking at that or cares about that? So the kind of mixed incentives is interesting here.
But it is going to be interesting. I mean, so then it also speaks to the question of we've speculated for years there, right, about like what the facilities for cleaning and maintaining fleet uptime looks like. Like, is this what the future of auto rental looks like, right? In the sense of like, is Moove going to invest in these kinds of facilities, or is there going to be subcontractees all the way down? These are the interesting like stack questions and strategic questions.
Whatever's the saddest outcome is probably the one. But no, I was walking around Santa Monica last weekend and just happened to stumble past a Waymo sort of charging and service lot scene where there was dozens of beeping Waymos and a bunch of humans vacuuming them on and just sort of like servicing them. So no matter what. Yeah, that's the non-futuristic side of this. It's a car and it needs car loving. Yeah,
and as we've seen, despite years and years and years of futuristic renderings and imagining pristine showroom quality stuff for this, it's going to be basically an arbitrage of the lowest cost workers doing this in the lowest cost infrastructure, which will probably usually be in public. So I look forward to fleets of gig workers maintaining fleets of Waymos on public streets.
And I think the same thing we've seen with Uber and Lyft is the average consumer doesn't want to pay a premium for a pristine vehicle. They'll accept a so-so vehicle if it saves them a couple bucks. And like, probably me too, right? Like, I don't actually need to be chauffeured around. I just want A to B. The other thing I'm also curious about, they haven't really discussed yet, is exactly what cars they're going to be buying, right? Like, we've heard that the Jags are out and there's the new Chinese-made cheaper cars, but like, how does that get impacted by the tariffs, right? Like, how are they getting those cars in? Are they still cheaper? I've seen some of them testing around LA, but that's
quick
a
looks
couple
up
of them.
The tariff rate on Nigeria here. Like, is this what this is actually about? Is this a tariff arbitrage play? If so, that could end tomorrow night, or in the next 15 minutes. Yeah. But speaking of geopolitics, our next item, veering away from mobility for a moment here, is what's this one? So Apple's getting into the rare earths business, right?
Yeah, not necessarily veering away from mobility. In Apple's case, yes, but these rare earths good for everything from phone batteries to car batteries to weapons. Basically, the entire modern world runs off of a couple rare minerals, and they've historically been basically all in China. Oops, because we sort of let our own domestic mining wither. But now
Domestic
America's so
everything
back,
else.
baby. So Apple's put in $500 million to buy up a share of MP Materials, and I think they're in like the Mojave Desert somewhere. So next time I'm in Joshua Tree, I'll get out some binoculars. But who are they co-investing beside? Who else is changing the way we expect politics to be done these days?
Could it be the nation state, maybe?
Yes. So Apple and Pentagon teaming up.
Not Pentagon Industries, the Pentagon.
The
Department of
Pentagon. Have
Defense.
you heard of them? And yeah, the Pentagon is going to be the largest stockholder, I believe. So those will be some interesting board meetings.
Yeah, nationalization of things is going to be interesting. But although separate from the Pentagon one, the Apple part is just interesting to me as an aside here. Where if you look at a lot of the breathless coverage around BYD, for example, and it's a commanding heights of the Chinese EV economy as it's getting there, is that there's all this breathless coverage about like BYD's secret sauce is that they have internalized so many of the components, software, and production that they've become vertically integrated in this new age. And it's just fascinating to me because, like, to quote wrestling, is that Henry Ford's music? That's Henry Ford's music. Like, we're like River Rouge 2.0 is now like Chinese EV factories, and this idea that we've got to control the supply chain. Tired is turning sand and coal from the Great Lakes into the glass of your windshields, powering your furnaces. And the wired version is like controlling your own rare earth metal recycling here, so you can basically integrate it into your products. Not just have silicon like Apple does. You got to have it all.
You got to have it all. Well, now I'm excited for 20 years from now, somewhere at the withered end of the Belton Road, there'll be a modern day equivalent of Fordlandia, right? The abandoned Ford rubber plant in the deepest parts of the Brazilian jungle. So, yeah, to your point, we've seen this play out before, and usually it turns out you don't want to go all the way, vertically and horizontally integrated.
The pendulum will swing back. Well, hopefully we're all alive to see it when it does there. But
I hope so. Well, not to get too way down the rabbit hole of kind of military tech, but this one, I don't know, the nerd in me, I couldn't resist it. That Auriga Space raised $6 million to shoot rockets off an electromagnetic launch track. And I'm just thinking like railgun from 90s video games. I don't know. Is that wrong? Is that not a good reference point?
I love it. It's Gibsonian, perhaps. Yeah, it's very much William Gibson's Count Zero, or more recently Ghost Fleet, the Tom Clancy techno thriller-esque.
Well, how many techno thrillers do you read a month, Greg?
None anymore. But when I was like 11 years old, man, I could read Tom Clancy in a single sitting there back in the day. Third World War was going to be so cool once upon a time, and now look what we have instead. But that's not the most outlandish one. My favorite headline that I think that we have this week to cover is Amogi. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I love none of these companies have pronounceable names.
Yeah, is raising $80 million to power ships and data centers with ammonia. Now, obviously, this is, and you can explain because this is your item. This is a hydrogen play, but it's still very funny to think about. Like, ammonia. Like, yeah.
Well,
also,
lock up your sinks.
Yeah, tired, ripping the copper wire out of your walls. Wired, like stealing the ammonia from under your sinks. But no, what's the play here, Jonah?
Yeah, it's meant to be like a greener way to kind of co-generate power. The details escape me because I'm not an ammonia guy. I'm just a transportation tech guy. I'm not an ammonia guy. But basically, it's thought to be greener. It's supposed to be more transportable. It's less dangerous to transport than just sort of like pure hydrogen, obviously. And then when you have sort of independent sites like a boat or a data center that might not be able to get enough, kind of grid load, this is sort of like a cleaner stepping stone than just doing a kind of classic hydrogen, I suppose. So kudos to you, company with unpronounceable name.
Very good. Well, that's not the case of our next item here, which is, I would say, if you were a transportation tech guy, some might call me the transportation tech hater. But I do have companies I love and I'm cheering for and desperately want to have happen. And this is one of those. And that is Rivian's quasi-stealthy startup spinoff, also,
Yeah.
a name that we can pronounce, although it does create a sort of Abbott and Costello. Also
Yeah.
has raised another $200 million to build what, like the Rivian e-bike
The
and something
Rivian of
else.
bike-like vehicles. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this one because when my sons ask me like, "What's my favorite car? What's my ideal car?" Like thinking I'm going to name some sort of supercar, I love to troll them with like an electric bicycle. But maybe Rivian will take my words and make them true. We'll see. But I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts, Jonah. I'm deeply
I'm
cheering
most
for them,
interested in,
anticipating this. Like we need a breakthrough in the
yeah,
micromobility
I want to
category.
see it as much as the next guy, as much as the next transportation tech guy wants to see it.
Yeah.
I'm just fascinated, raising another 200 million after their big round, I don't know, a month or two ago.
And also, when the parent
supposedly
company is
at a
not
billion
on
dollar
like a
plus.
glide path to heavy profitability either. Like this is a fascinating risk to take on that they've got this whole separate raise going on right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Billion dollar plus valuation, I believe. And again, yeah, no product out there. Not much other than a couple dorks like you and I excited about it. So it's given a little bit, we're so back vibes because it just makes me think of like the peak micromobility era. Which is why I like clashing this into the next story because it's like the anti-we're so back.
I was just going to say it's actually very au courant because doing pre-product fundraising is just, I mean, we live in a world of AI now, but yes, let's harken back to our last abortive wave of just total speculation, and I'll let you take this one, Jonah.
Yeah,
it's such
yeah.
a
So
fun one.
smack that idea out of your head.
Yeah.
Akon's Wakanda crypto city in Senegal has been. I know everyone was just had your reservations ready, but it's been canceled, which is really sad. Which to me, I mean, a little off topic here, but sort of smart cities. That's veering into our lane. Crypto scamming. That's veering into our SPAC lane. So. People might remember Acoin, which was going to
All
be
my
Akon's
Acoin are gone.
altcoin.
All your Acoin are belong to us.
Yeah. So no more Wakanda City. They're just going to build a humble resort in Senegal. We'll see if that happens either. But not every beautiful smart city dream will come to fruition, I'm afraid. But
I don't know. Yeah, the crypto bros, Praxis and elsewhere will just have to go keep building their citadels of Western civilization on their own.
if that was the city of tomorrow, how are things in the city of the past, Greg?
Things are going great. Well, I'm here in Montreal where our summers are just too hot. And all that said, driving back into the city yesterday on brand, like looking at the smog covering the city, I had to check our air quality, and wow, is it terrible? But we were still in better.
Is Canada on fire again?
Canada's on fire again, always. It's that season where Canada's on fire. Actually, all year long now. Listeners may have read about the zombie fires that basically smolder throughout the winters and then reignite the moment the snow melts there. So Canada, always burning. That's what we got going on. But no, back in New York City, we got two news items. One, on the plus side, Mayor Adams, set to oppose the socialist Zohran Mamdani, has come out guns blazing with a renewed proposal for his Department of Sustainable Delivery. Like, going after, I mean, literally everybody there, challenging the city council, like push through my idea.
Fiery press release.
Needing an accomplishment here in the middle of election season, obviously. But, guns blazing against the delivery companies as well. The Instacart loophole and others. I'll hand it over to you in a second, but I just think it's fascinating, and I think I love this department idea because it does show that city governments should and continue to innovate and shouldn't continue to react to new technological and other developments by actually rethinking like what responsibilities it brings. Like people think of in New York, at least, of the Taxi and Limousine Commission, the TLC, as something that's been around forever. It was formed in 1971 under similar circumstances. So I think this is actually one of Adams's best policy proposals. I'm kind of biased, but
yeah. Although they're fighting over, was it an Adams proposal? Was it a city council proposal? Who gets the credit if it works? I thought you were going to talk about the flooding, though.
Well, there's the bad news. Yes, the flooding. This is another one of those cases, right, Jonah?
Describe a flood.
Well, climate change. There's a great quote from somewhere on Twitter that climate change is something we will all experience through someone else's cell phone footage until it is our turn to take the footage. And it was someone else's turn in flooding there as massive non-tropical storm deluged the city, one of the highest amounts of rainfall in a single hour in the city's history in 150 years of recorded records. I think it was number 4 overall. And yeah, just scary footage coming out of the subway system of water up to the windows, which is about 3 to 4 feet off the ground. So
yeah, that's enough to sweep a person off their feet.
Yeah,
every summer we get gross footage of flooded East Coast subway systems and highways, but this was a particularly gripping one. Yeah, people, if you haven't looked at it already, just look NYC flooding. It's better than our description, but that's some high and fetid looking water.
Well, and underscoring again, what do we need? What do we need all that congestion pricing money for? I need it to basically climate-proof the subways, and yeah, another hard lesson there on climate adaptation and the funding that's going to be needed to do it.
And probably
Particularly
also
when
good,
there was
so it means
very
slightly
little
fewer
warning.
cars stuck in the, those other tunnels that could flood as well.
It's very true. All right, well, let's skip across the pond. Europe has its own climate disasters, but I don't think that's what we've got covering from our partners over at ZAG, Jonah. But what do we got up first here from the
Yeah, a
ZAG team?
couple good Zag stories. Folks, make sure you're hitting Zag every day. But for our scooter heads out there, so it's been 5 years of e-scooter trialing in the United Kingdom. People might recall that they were very late to the game. They were sort of like just famously illegal for any purpose. Like you just could not have a scooter in Great Britain, and they love arbitrary laws there, I suppose. But so 5 years of piloting, and it seems like it hasn't gone tremendously well. What are the lessons learned? Basically, like you need to update the pilots. The legislation's still out of date. You need the local government to buy in. It's not just that you can say, okay, we can do this, but if the city's not working with you, it's going to flop. So sort of, I would say the same lessons learned the rest of the world over, but 5 years later, I don't know. A pound late, a penny short, a pence short. I don't know.
Well, yes, no. Well, it could be an interesting case for them though of being sometimes it pays to be second movers or last movers, I guess in this case, because it is interesting. I was reading David Zipper, for folks who follow him as well. He just recently had a conversation with the Polis Network's Karen van Cloysen, who's friends of ours as well too, about the ongoing sort of reluctance still in Europe about a lot of the sort of dockless fleets. So hopefully they're learning lessons there that we learned the hard way, but we'll see.
Yeah. Never too late to learn, folks. Speaking of learning, what if a computer could do the learning for you? So Switch launching an AI agent meant for fleets, mobility, logistics operations, basically sort of taking an agentic approach where, the all-seeing God eye of AI says, oh, you got too many vehicles in zone B, you should move them to zone C, or notice you got, downtime at the 9 p.m. shoulder hour. I'm sort of surprised it took people this long to apply this sort of AI learning to the mobility domain. But it's here. So I think this will be one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, conceptually it makes a lot of sense. I do love, by the way, reading the Zag story, my favorite line in the whole piece is the founder of Switch's AI agentic platform was first going to create a consumer car sharing app and was like, LOL, no. So there you go. Building an agentic AI platform is
At least someone's learning.
Not just more remunerative in 2025, but a lot easier than building a car sharing app again. So that stands out. But yeah, this is a no-brainer to me. I mean, this is the only part about LLMs and agentic AI I really get excited about, which is this notion of like you take agentic AI and you give it vision models and other stuff there where it can intervene and watch in the built environment, and now you suddenly have all of these agents that can skitter around through real-time map and image data, and can basically have this sort of level of eyes on the street that can basically check to see where all of your vehicles are and are they in compliance. And, there's MDS and, of course, various cities have adopted these kinds of schemes. But like, it's an interesting and fascinating new way of having these kinds of having a fleet of invisible, interns, if we want to, as people keep calling that about these AIs. But you can set a fleet of interns out there to be like, how's the car doing? What's going on with it? And reporting back and creating these kinds of reporting flows. We'll see if Switch is able to build this, but this is a lot of the excitement around it, this idea of how we can do that. So wish them well in that case. I mean, hopefully they can build something that's effective and interesting and can definitely help bring down that cost of operation, that TCO for everybody to make it worthwhile. So Godspeed.
Speaking of ever watching and speeding, yes. So a look at how ISA, Intelligent Speed Assistance, is finally kind of catching on in the U.S. So Virginia and Washington State finally requiring repeat speed offenders to have ISA systems in their vehicle. So basically, like if you're speeding for the 10th time after being arrested for it, I guess I don't know if this is one that just beeps noisily at you or actually takes control and applies. Cuts off your accelerator, but nice to have the smallest of action to keep terrible drivers off the roads. And other states looking into California, New York State, Maryland, kind of all the usual suspects here.
All the usual suspects there. They want to bring down traffic fatalities.
Contentious issue.
Indeed. Well, yes, gets the of course questions of liberty and freedom and free will and all that one too. But yes, I guess I am a fan. If we pass laws on what speeds you should go, perhaps you can have different methods of enforcing them. So. But it's good to see see this more of the evidence coming in here and seeing more states do this.
Yeah, well, and that opens a whole question of like, will your robo-taxi be able to speed for you? You know, if you tip your Waymo well, can it beat that red?
Oh gosh. Well, that all depends on your driver. That all depends on your rider score and your credit score. I'm sure.
And which Grok persona you've picked.
Yes, there you go. Although that's one of my favorite things about riding Waymos, though. It's such a delightfully smooth and polite ride. It's like I was like,
that's
oh
true.
yes, we
That's
will
true.
not be getting
It's
there
not
quickly.
trying to make a quick buck.
Pull that laptop out, kids. You're going to be there a while. Yeah.
And then one last story feels a little futuristic. Jetson, great name, folks.
How is that trademarkable? Who dropped the ball there?
Well,
Hanna-Barbera?
maybe in Poland it's trademarkable. So it completed the first eVTOL mountain rescue trial in Poland, and so it's kind of a fun application of technology. Makes more sense than people just sort of jetting across the city to beat traffic.
Well, yes, but two thoughts there, particularly in this particular use case. One, kudos to them. They've learned the lessons of Zipline and others, which is start with the public safety. We're good citizens. We're going to use this to help people.
Sure.
Proven
And there's
concept.
budgets.
And there's budgets, great. But the second part that immediately comes to mind is I was at the Googleplex 10 plus years ago for a summit on autonomy, and Astro Teller, captain of Moonshots, does the opening keynote. And I think his opening anecdote is that at X, they had thought about doing a jetpack. He's like, why would we do a jetpack? What would be the business model for jetpacks? To fly over the mountains on the peninsula to your otherwise inaccessible cabin on the top of the mountains. And I'm like, here's where this is going. It's a real estate play. This is a tool that will open up for access. So kids, invest in Polish mountains.
Sprawl all the way down.
There you go. Well, that or military defense, man. You want to carry
was
up
his
your
birth
mountain
name
troops?
Astro Teller, or did he just?
I think it's there. I mean, Poles. If you think there's budgets in Polish mountain rescues, there's got to be Polish military budgets. What's going to be their GDP spending? 10%, 15%? I don't think there's anything Poland won't spend on its military.
It's all going to the submarines.
Yes. Well, speaking of which, nobility, one unscheduled item, I'm sure listeners might have seen this, but if you want to go see how things are going in the world of teleoperation, they recently ceased a narco sub somewhere, I believe, in the broader Caribbean there, that was being remotely operated by Starlink teleoperation. So There we go. You can now run your own drug-running sub. It's only a matter of time before they think of something new for that one there, too.
Brave new world. And I think that's a perfect segue. Let's hear from our ZAG friends from the European Autonomous Vehicle Summit.
Today, we're in South London for the annual European AV Summit, a meeting point for policymakers, investors, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders focused on the future of autonomous mobility. And this year, there's a distinct shift in tone. The sector has moved beyond the hype. It's no longer a question of if autonomous vehicles will arrive, but how, where, and on what terms. With hundreds of participants, the summit marks what some are calling an inflection point. The buzzword is AV 2.0, a new phase where the focus is less on vision and more on practical deployment, commercial viability, and integration into existing regulatory frameworks. We spoke to Dr. Anat Leah Bonstein from Mobillion Ventures, who explains what this new phase means from an investor's perspective.
We as investors are looking for use cases that have the ROI, the deployment, and there are use cases like that. There are solutions to support that, and that's what will bring the shift to more autonomous use cases.
It's a sentiment echoed across the summit. From freight to public transport, the conversation is increasingly about deployment at scale, with autonomy as a tool to solve concrete problems. We sat down with Jeroen Bikers from Geneva's public transport operator to hear how attitudes have shifted in just the past year.
Like in 2017, we talked a lot about EVs. It didn't happen, so there was some development. There were some smaller companies in Europe who started to deploy vehicles. Didn't work out, or not so much. But we see the last year, especially, that more and more OEMs, policymakers in Europe and everywhere, and especially also PTOs and PTAs, so public transport operators and public transport authorities, are more and more interested in adopting the AV technology for their business.
As one investor put it, we're in the second half of the football match. The technology has proven itself, but what happens next depends on how governments and companies choose to deploy it. Athena Browning, ZAG Daily.
We're back. Now we're joined by Steve Greenfield, general partner at Automotive Ventures. Hey, Steve.
Jonah, it's really, really good to catch up.
How are the cats doing?
Cats are good. We're up to 14, so they're all rescues, and they're all living in the same house as me. So it's never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment. Longtime listeners, I think they're tuning in for animal sounds and babies crying in the background. So that's what we promise them with the show. But no, Steve, I'm so excited to have you here. I've really admired your work, what you're building, and honestly, I think you're just sort of like one of the nicest guys in the biz, and I mean that as a sincere compliment. There's nothing backhanded about that. I think niceness pays it forward. So,
well,
for
right back
people
at you, my friend. Right back at you.
Thank you. People that aren't as well versed in this, like, give us a little bit of Steve background, would you?
Yeah, the short version is, 25 years in sort of like the automotive business. I started in Toronto, where I'm from, working at a car auction, not knowing anything about anything. And the car auction was owned by a billionaire family down here in Atlanta, where I am now, Cox Enterprises, and was the largest auction company in the world. So had the opportunity to relocate down to the US, spend half that time structuring joint ventures overseas, which was really cool at that age. And then 10 years in, the CEO of a sister company, Autotrader.com, reached out and said, hey, we're going to sell off a minority stake in Autotrader, and I need someone to come over and report to me and oversee acquisitions. So I was like, okay, how quickly can we make it happen? So that was an interesting tangent for me to go off a different path, and oversaw over $1 billion in acquisitions in 14 months, which was crazy times, but learned a lot. And then the last sort of the bookend on the corporate career was two years out close to where you are, out in Santa Monica, working for TrueCar, overseeing strategy and acquisitions there. And frankly, by the time COVID hit, I had already resigned, and I was glad to get back to Atlanta and start this thing. So yeah, we're 4.5 years in now on fund number 3. We've made 42 investments. So a good pace, about 10 investments a year. We're seeing 100 to 150 companies a month, translating those into 10 investments a year. And we've made a lot of mistakes, but we're getting smarter. And I'm just really appreciative we get to network with folks like you on a week-to-week basis and continue to build the network and see better entrepreneurs and help those entrepreneurs succeed.
That's the fun part of this business.
It is indeed.
And would you say, are you coming at this for love of automotive, love of mobility, love of business? Like, what's the motivating factor here?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that I spent, like I said, most of my time in corporate roles, big companies, multi-billion-dollar companies mostly, and overseeing strategy and acquisition. So they were good roles that paid me really well. But at the end of the day, I guess I like to look back at the end of each year and say, what did I accomplish? Because we know we're not going to live forever. We've all got only a limited amount of time on the planet, and I would like to say, and this may be just driven by ego, but I'd like to say that I've made positive progress, and there's nothing like owning your own thing, as you know. Yeah. And you really want unifying metrics in the business that you believe in. We're helping entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs are like the backbone of America. America wouldn't exist. Everything you buy, everything you do, every brand you consume started with one entrepreneur that had an idea. And it's amazing to think through like the influence that capitalism has had on this country and entrepreneurship, and now we get to play our little part in that. And like I find that very, very fulfilling. I get to now live vicariously through these 42 entrepreneurs that we've invested in. And I spend my whole day like you do talking to entrepreneurs. I probably have like 8 to 10 Zoom calls, 30-minute Zoom calls every day with entrepreneurs. Most of them I'll never ever talk to again. I get to hear their pitch, and I'm sizing them up on Zoom. And the ones that we like, we push forward through our process very aggressively, and try to win the opportunity to have them take money from us.
And what are you looking for? You're on a Zoom call, someone you've never met before. You've done 3 emails before with them, and you see a smiling face and maybe a pitch deck. What are you looking for?
Yeah, so we're learning. We're learning 42 investments in. I think that I would put that into two broad buckets, right? One is, what are we looking for from the company standpoint? And we highly index towards the founder and the founding team, right? We talk about, like a lot of VCs do, some derivative of team, total addressable market, and defensibility, product, approach, whatever it might be. Without those 3, I mean, you're quick to dismiss. But if you're indexing very heavily, as we are early stage, where we're investing to the founder and the founding team, we're building out the archetypes, now that we can look back at 42 and say, like, which ones have worked out really, really well and which ones haven't worked out at all? And is there anything that we should have learned retroactively to be able to now like provide sort of a framework for going forward? And a lot of it is just very intuitive, right? It's like high ethics. You want somebody who's honest and is always going to tell you the truth, and high integrity. You want somebody obviously who has high intelligence. And this is like, actual intelligence and also emotional intelligence, because the
EQ,
CEO is going to be
IQ.
selling, right? EQ, right, exactly right. You want people that, have somewhere along their journey found something secret, right? And sort of like their why. Why are they doing this? The best case is like somewhere along their journey, they discovered something. And they may not have had the bandwidth or time or reason to follow it then, but it's haunted them ever since. And now they can go back and they can go try to vanquish that particular dragon, right? So I think that's a unique insight that others don't have. And then all the regular stuff you read, like resiliency and grit, urgency, the ability to execute, these are all interesting as well. But I think at the end of the day, it is sort of like the intelligence, both types of intelligence. All the better. There's sugar on top of the dessert if you have a repeat founder who's proven that they've already been through this before and been able to build a business, whether they failed or that they've succeeded. But we do like to find this essence, this reason, and the reason around coming somewhere from like something personal to them.
Yeah, some reason it's not just numbers that sort of, I thought I could make 2% more doing this, but they have a passion, a calling, something burning in them to solve this problem.
Well put. Yeah. I mean, something where even if it wasn't about, it shouldn't be about the money. It should never be about the money, right? I have to go solve this. And these are the reasons why. We want to hear that in the first call, right? So if we don't hear these things, enough of these, we can easily dismiss. I mean, as you can imagine, you hardly ever get the planets to align and get check boxes across all of those. So inevitably, then you're debating, like, is this deal good enough? Is this founding team good enough? Is the actual idea good enough to go pursue? And then you have to, it's a gut call in most of them. It's very rare where I get off the first call. It happens where I'm like, I'm almost certain we're going to invest in this thing. And we push through very aggressively to make that investment.
Sure, you don't know you're going to marry someone on the first date, right? You gotta.
Not usually, although you hear the story.
Sometimes.
Sometimes people do. They have the aha moment right away. But usually that's because they've had the experience from dating and life that they realize when they come across something that's truly unique.
And would you say, not to get too inside baseball here, but are you keeping robust enough notes of like everything you saw at each touch point so that, when the fund is closed and you can look back at the winners and losers, you can say, oh, wow, like, turns out that 80% of the winners all had this quality and, most of the losers lacked blah, blah, blah. Like, or is it still just more of a traditional learning process where you just iterate, kind of get a better gut each time you do it and improve naturally?
Well, I think a combination, we do and have gone back and tried to, say, what did we think at the time of that founder and the idea? And then given what we've learned since, how would we score them now? And there are like big deltas in some cases, right? So, but yeah, going forward, we're trying to be much more disciplined about using these frameworks and applying them. But I'm certain that 2 years from now, when you and I catch up, you'll be like, we've thrown that out and we have a much better framework. So we're dealing only with what we have at our disposal right now. And once we've gotten to 100 investments in 5 more years, we'll have much better data and we'll be much better investors as a result. I hope we're always learning and challenging ourselves. And but yeah, I mean, we try to do our best of trying to recollect at the time what we were thinking.
Yeah, it's the best you can do. So speaking of learning, you've got 3 funds now. You've been at it since 2021. What's it like as an emerging manager? You launched your first fund. You've obviously succeeded enough to do a second and third. Are the funds, they have different theses, different LPs? Like how are you operating as a startup yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one, I'll say, if we hadn't launched when we did, we decided to launch 5 years ago. I think it was July 18th, 2020, when we first decided let's go launch a fund and start fundraising. So it was 5 years ago, and if I hadn't raised that first fund in that window, there's no way I would have raised that first fund now. with this environment. No way.
There was that year where the money was just there for anyone to grab it.
Valuations were sky high, but yeah, I mean, the LPs out there, the investors, were very open-minded to getting exposure to VC. VC had done well as an asset class. There was a lot of liquidity, right? There were IPOs, and remember the SPAC frenzy, and so a bunch of VC-funded companies were getting exits. So the world was abuzz around VC and how you needed to get exposed to it, et cetera. So it was a good time. So I would say that, like, I'm very appreciative, and we'll always remember that, like, timing had everything to do with raising that first fund. But yeah, we raised a first fund. It's fully deployed. We made 24 investments out of that little $7 million fund. We opportunistically, about 6 months in, realizing that a third of our LPs were car dealers, we raised what we call a dealer fund. We raised from car dealers a $13 million fund. We've made 10 investments out of that fund, and our thesis there is, like, get this flywheel effect. Like, your LPs are your customers.
Yeah.
They can help you vet the deals before you ever invest, drive adoption once you do invest, spread the gospel via word of mouth to network, et cetera. And we'll see how that one works out. I mean, I think that the interesting thing, our broad mobility fund will look more like typical VC, where you get this crazy power law, meaning that a couple of companies will get most of the returns in the fund, and you have a bunch of companies that don't make it.
Yeah, most go to zero.
Whereas in the dealer fund, because we do have this captive audience of dealers to vet the deals and be the customers, I think we'll have very few failures. But will we have any? Like in our first fund, we're going to have 100xer, and everybody, if you get 100xer, like, you pretty much are golden. That first fund will, probably return, when all said and done, 5x gross, four times cash on cash to our investors, which will easily put us in top decile, which is great. And then, everything else is looked after, because you go into databases and everybody sees, this crazy performance on the first fund. We had the advantage of timing. We had the advantage of having a small fund. So, but on the dealer fund, we might actually get the same returns, but we'll have, like, there won't be any 100xers. I mean, everything will be sort of like, very average returners, 4 or 5x. We might get some 10x's out of it, but I think we'll have almost no bankruptcies out of that fund. So, and then the third fund, to your point, we are fundraising now. We're just about to wrap a fund up. That fund is back to the original thesis, which is just global mobility. We're looking for great entrepreneurs hunting, big ideas anywhere around the world, anywhere across the mobility spectrum, but trying to invest as early as possible.
Everybody moves and everything moves. It's a big space.
It is a big space.
Have you found, I can imagine, especially with the dealer-focused fund, are a lot of the dealers coming in as sort of co-investors, where they say, hey, you already got our general money, but we like this one so much, like, we want to throw in an extra, $500K here too?
Well, that was the beautiful thing about the timing on the first fund. So exactly right. So I didn't fancy that people were looking at me with that first fund and saying, oh, you're going to be a great investor. But they knew with my network that I was going to see a lot of deals, and that because our check sizes were so small, I mean, our initial check in that first fund was 150 grand. So we were never taking the lead. We were never going to squeeze anybody else out. And there was almost always going to be space in our rounds alongside us. That's really, I think, where most of the LPs said, let me buy some optionality here. Visibility and optionality. He'll see good deal flow, and then I'll have the option to potentially step up and co-invest alongside, which happened in many cases, which is great. And I think that's a great perk for anybody else out there who's thinking about launching a fund. Really think about that as a value prop. Allowing LPs, depending who the LPs are. I mean, pension funds aren't going to co-invest alongside you, but high net worth individuals and a lot of strategic companies. One of the big things you bring to the table is your deal flow. And if you can bring, like, differentiated deal flow that they're not going to see, that's attractive to them, that's very, very a great enhancement, right, to making you more attractive as a fund manager.
Yeah. Yeah, I think to your point, these sort of funds can almost become sort of CVC as a service, corporate venture capital, where you're, even if it's not literally in your contract terms, what you're doing is giving them deal flow, giving them your insights, your thoughts, your analyses. And so, they're getting a heck of a bargain if they gave you, $250K to play around with, but then you're giving them all these insights. Like, good deal for them.
Yeah, I think so. And we work very closely with a lot of our companies, and in fact, even some of our individuals, and scrutinizing their business, and they run strategy by me and our team. And yeah, we don't have, like, some VCs have kind of bolted on a almost a consulting firm, right?
Yeah.
To interface with the LPs. We don't, but I understand that some of the value we bring is the visibility and network we have, and how we can challenge their strategy and help them, think through during their annual strategic planning processes, really help them think through and scrutinize, like, are they heading in the right direction? And we do that a lot with a number of our LPs.
Operationally, how does the business work? Small team, distributed. What's it like? Who's making what decision? How do you guys, spend your time?
Yeah, so I would like, for the benefit of folks that are listening in, like, two frameworks to think of, right? So we're effectively managing a two-sided marketplace, as you can imagine. You got deal flow on one side, 100 companies or so a month that you're managing through, that come from a multitude of sources. Some of them come organically now that we have a brand. The high quality ones come from referrals, right? It's either an entrepreneur that refers a company to us, it's an LP, or it's industry folks like you, where we're sharing deal flow all the time, which you and I do. On the flip side of the marketplace, it's like where the money comes from, the limited partners, the LPs. In our case, most of it is high net worth individuals, but increasingly companies, right? And eventually pension funds and those kinds of funds that once you have proven performance, you go into databases, and they're looking for general partners like myself who have proven that they can get above average returns, right? Generate alpha. And then you've got you need to keep gas in the tank, so you're almost always fundraising.
Yeah.
And then the underpinnings of this whole thing is the brand. What makes you unique as a firm, and how are you going to differentiate? And then, with your scarce resources, how are you going to sort of like define that? We spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. We have a weekly newsletter like you. You've got your conferences. We've just started to kick off conferences, et cetera. So there's kind of playbooks that you can play. I've written 2 books since I left my last corporate role, and do a lot of speaking engagements. So you balance these things, right? The brand on top of which you've got deal flow, you've got LPs, and then you've got your portfolio companies. In our case, we've got 42. I think I'm on six boards now. So you have to do your work from a governance standpoint and help these entrepreneurs do everything within your power to help your entrepreneurs grow, right? Yeah. So with 3 full-time employees, that's a lot. On the other framework I think that is valuable, and I obsess over a little bit, is this framework, and VCs will call these things differently, but we're all in the same business, is you're sourcing, you're picking, you're winning, you're energizing, and you're exiting, right? If you think of that linear process, your sourcing is like the 100 to 150 companies that you see a month. How do you widen the top of the funnel and see more companies? Your picking is, of those, which ones do you want to invest in? The next part is the real differentiator, I think, is like winning the good deals. Because if you're a good entrepreneur and you've got a hot company, you get the pick of the litter, right? You can pick whichever investors you want. And who am I to get on someone's cap table? So it flips the script from what an entrepreneur typically thinks about the fundraising process. Like, oh, I got to go talk to a bunch of VCs to get money. But the truth is, if you're really, really talented, you're going to have no problem raising money.
The money finds you, yeah.
Trying to argue, right, and make a case for why an entrepreneur should take money from you. This applies to the biggest VCs out there, and obviously newer entrants like ourselves. So we think a lot about winning as well. And then obviously, like I said, spending time with the portfolio to energize growth. And then when they're ready to exit, if they want you as a thought partner to help them maximize that exit. In some cases, we'll play a role in that. In many cases, by then, they'll have other VCs that have much bigger positions that will help them think through how to maximize exit. But those 5 steps are something that I do obsess about, mostly about that middle step, which is winning deals, the hardest deals to get into, and how do we make a compelling argument and want to be the preferred source of capital for an entrepreneur who's very gifted.
Yeah. It's both sides got to say, pick me.
Correct.
I want to zoom out for a second, kind of final little section for this conversation. What are your thoughts about macro landscape? Where's the world of mobility, automotive transportation headed? What are you thinking about? What's keeping you up at night? What's your crystal ball say?
Well, luckily, I sleep well. So
all the cats.
I don't really worry. I think that, folks like you and I have the distinct advantage of looking at the landscape, building hypotheses about the futures, and then riding the waves. I would not, for example, want to be an automaker right now. That would scare the crap out of me where
Certainly.
automakers are right now. But I think there are industry participants that are literally on the precipice of disruption. And but I think that the enviable position that you and I find ourselves in is we aren't sort of committed to business models that, we could say that the VC model will get disrupted, but okay, sure, could be, but I think through hard work and being smart, it'll be fine and be defensible long term. But I think the good thing, the implications there is there's a lot of change going on, and across the entire spectrum. The world that you typically dwell in, right? Sort of micromobility and the curb and autonomy and these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Logistics as well. Electrification. While we're hitting a bit of a pause here, long term, there's almost no doubt in my mind that in 20 years the dominant drivetrain globally for passenger vehicles and likely commercial is going to be electric. People will argue with that, but it seems to me that's kind of inevitable at this point. So that's thrilling to me. That's not so thrilling to an automaker that's trying to anticipate when will consumers demand EVs and how do I prepare for that future. Especially we look not only at ground transport, we look at aviation, we look at marine. We even invested in a space launch company. So when you look across this whole spectrum, there's no shortage of disruption going on, but radical innovation. And I think that it's great. I only have to pick 25 companies per fund. We see thousands per year. So the job is, like I said, picking the right ones and then winning the opportunity to get into the right ones with great entrepreneurs. But it's an exciting time. It's exhilarating. But luckily, I appreciate being on this side of the fence. Operators and operating businesses right now, really are facing a lot of potential disruptive threats.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what makes it such a fun business.
Indeed.
Steve, thank you so much for your time. This was a great conversation.
Anytime, Joe. It's always great to catch up.